Welcome to Fire Your Hiring Habits with John Mitchell. This is the place where we dive into the world of talent acquisition, explore the challenges of today's workplace, and discover what it takes to build a thriving and successful organization.
Judy Gilbert joins me on the podcast this week. Judy is not only a leader in the field of human resources, but also a champion of culture and talent in the fast-growing and cutting-edge industry of biotechnology. She is the Chief People Officer of ŌURA, the company behind the smart ring that helps you optimize your health and performance. At ŌURA, Judy leads a global team of people who are passionate about empowering people to live better lives through data and insights. Judy has a wealth of experience in building and scaling world-class organizations and has been instrumental in shaping the culture and values of some of the most innovative and impactful companies in the world. Judy, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, John. It's great to be here.
I'm so excited about this. So as mentioned, you've worked at some world-class companies, but before we get into where you've been, tell me about your HR journey. How did you end up here?
Yeah, I never would have thought that I would end up in HR. When I was in college and coming out of college, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And so in college, I was a double major, econ and history. And that took me into management consulting. So I joined McKinsey straight out of college, which was a great way to defer the decision about what I was going to have to be when I grew up, because I figured as a consultant, I would get put on interesting projects. I'd be able to use some of the skills that I developed in college while really learning more about business and trying out some different hats. And, that was back in the early 90s. And one of the things that I observed as I worked with different companies and saw different organizations from the inside was that the people function really was generally pretty underdeveloped. And that seemed like a missed opportunity. So as I started thinking about where to take my career, I started looking for ways to apply the experience that I had in business onto the people side of things. And eventually that took me to Google. And I joined Google shortly after they went public. So they were about 3,000 employees at the time. But growth was a really critical area for them. So I had the opportunity to work in and build the recruiting organization. And then I really spent the next 12 years jumping into whatever big people issues Google had at the time, and got to have a front row seat and really help to build some of those things out and develop them over time. It was about 70,000 people by the time I left in 2017. So, really had been through a lot of different stages. I spent more than a decade at Google and was kind of missing the smaller company environment. So I spent the last 5 years or so at a smaller company in the biotech space, going through some of those growth stages again and growing that company from about 200 and, learning some things, applying some things from the Google playbook, but also building out the playbook for a different time. And now I've been at ŌURA since earlier this year. And it's a stage of company I really like. We're around 500 people. We've got tons of opportunity ahead of us. And so really figuring out, how do we manage that growth? How do we put the right things in place in the right order and get the people stuff right to support the company that we want to build and the mission that we want to go after?
Excellent. I can totally relate to the trying to figure out what you want to be when you grow up. My background is also varied and I didn't even know such a thing as a trade association executive even existed when I was going to school, and here I played in the electrical engineering, got my business degree, doctorate in education. And so it's like, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up.
Yeah, it turns out you don't really have to choose. And that's a wonderful thing.
So let me go back into some of the things you just talked about. You spent over a decade with Google, and even though it's one of the biggest companies in the world, there's kind of an air of mystery about the company. Can you tell me a little bit about your time there? Because you were in some of the formative stages, bringing it from, as you said, a few thousand employees to tens of thousands.
Yeah, I think one of the funny things as I reflect on my time there is how fast it changed and how fast it kept changing. And, I remember we survey employees a lot and get feedback. And the theme so often came up of people saying, well, this is a different company from the one that I joined. And sometimes that would be as short as a summer intern at the end of their internship saying it's been 3 months and it's a completely different place. And they weren't wrong, because things were moving and evolving very quickly. And I think knowing that as you try to put programs in place, you have to meet the organization where it is. And recognize that there's got to be a balance between nothing is ever really going to be permanent. You want things to be stable and you want things to feel predictable and consistent, especially on the people side, because it's so important to the way people make choices, but it also needs to evolve. And so finding that balance so that it's something that people can hold on to, even as the organization itself is changing, the markets it competes in are changing, the world outside is changing. And so having just a little bit of stability is really important.
Got it. So you're coming out of Google, went in, you mentioned, to another kind of a smaller organization. What inspired you to make the shift to ŌURA as the Chief People Officer? Did you see an opportunity to make a difference, or is this just a really cool thing? You say, "Oh, I want to be part of that," or what brought you there?
Yeah, a little bit of all of those things. I took some time off after my last company to think about what I wanted to do next and how I wanted to engage. And when the ŌURA opportunity came up, like you said, it's a cool product. It was something that I hadn't been using it quite yet, but I had heard of it. I've used a lot of different wearables over time. I wore Google Glass when I was at X, and so I was kind of an early adopter of that and tried some things out. I had mechanical pedometers, and the whole idea of, I'm a bit of a data nerd, and so that idea of how do you get data about what's going on in your body in the world, and how do you use that to make your life better is really appealing. And so I was a little bit familiar with ŌURA. As I heard about this opportunity and then the need they had to lead this team and learned more about it, the stage that this company is at is kind of a sweet spot for me. It's big enough where the basic things are in place. I think I would be a lousy first HR person in an organization, and I have tons of respect.
Number 3.
Yeah, that's not me. I'm not going to build it all from scratch. And God bless the people who do and are good at that. But I'm much better when the basics are in place and we can sort of figure out how to optimize it and how to grow it and how to scale it. And so that was appealing. The leadership team that's coming together there under Tom Hale's leadership, he's been in role for about 1.5 years now. It's a really nice mix of people who bring capabilities from related but complementary industries and geographies. And so it's just a really exciting and vibrant leadership team to lead a company that's also diverse, and it's a complex product and a complex supply chain. And you need a lot of different skills, and you need people to collaborate really actively to make all that work. And so it's just an exciting system to be part of.
That's awesome. And so as you talk about this opportunity, let's dive in a little bit at ŌURA. So as I was writing, so the book, Fire Your Hiring Habits, it's all about finding and keeping top talent. And as I pulled the book together, culture and values seem to make up such a large portion of what it was important to people and what was important to finding and keeping the right people. How do you define culture and values at ŌURA, and what are some of the ways that you communicate or reinforce them within your team?
Yeah, I think these things are really important to us. And at the core of all of it is we have a mission to make health part of people's daily habit and to provide them with the tools to do that. And so the people who come to this company want to be part of that and want to be part of delivering that. We have a set of values that we talk about pretty regularly. They're not just stuck up there on the wall. In fact, I just came from our company all hands meeting, and we do this every month, and we have an award that we give to a person or a team who embodied some of the values in a particularly strong way, and we talk about that with the whole company. So one of our values that comes up a lot is Ubuntu, which is not me but we. And so we talk about how the team comes together, and it's that kind of collaboration across different functions, across different teams and geographies to do hard things. So we had a team with a really nice example of that. Another one of our values is to be solution focused. Don't just come with the problem, come with some ways to fix it. And that fits together. And so we really do use our values as a framework. They're really part of the way that we operate, and part of the way that we encourage each other and call each other out too.
Fantastic. So you're an upcoming, growing organization. You have the need for agility and innovation as you're going through that. How do you balance agility and innovation with the need for stability and alignment.
Yeah. It is a constant.
You're growing so fast, right?
Yeah, right. It's a constant dance. And so I think you need to have the long-term vision of where you want to go and a sense of what are the steps that we're going to put in place to get there. And I think especially in the people space, a lot of people have a lot of ideas about how they want things to be. And you just can't do all those things at once. But you can be consistent about saying, okay, here's where we're going. Here are the things that are important to us. We want to have, say, a compensation plan that incentivizes both individual performance, but also company performance, because it's not me, it's we. And so if we're going to do that, what are all the things that we need to have in place to make that happen? And how are we going to get there over time? And so you can talk to people about the long-term objective and kind of give them a progress report of where are we on putting all those things in place. To use the example of performance-based compensation, and this is from a previous company, if you don't have a system of some kind of system of leveling and job descriptions so that people know what good performance looks like for a given role, you can't do performance-based compensation. And so you better put that leveling system in place in some way. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be super detailed, but you got to get something in place so that you can move to the next step.
Yeah, excellent. So I work in the electronics manufacturing space with companies all over the world. I had a fascinating discussion with one gentleman, and he said, anybody can buy the equipment, anybody can buy the parts. It's the people that set companies apart from the other ones. So how do you measure and improve the engagement and satisfaction of members? And it doesn't have to be just at ŌURA. In your experience, what are some of the best practices that you've learned in previous roles? Because frankly, this is something that I run into in just about every company. How do we measure engagement and satisfaction?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a basic toolkit that is a good place to start. At every company that I've been at, there's been some form of engagement survey that gets done. And usually there's kind of an annual cadence for a big survey, and maybe there are some things interspersed to do smaller check-ins. But it's enough of a practice that there are validated questions. So you can, if you ask consistent questions, you can measure not only how is it going in your company over time or within an individual, compare different organizations or departments, but you can also get benchmarks from other companies that are in your space or a similar shape or size to get some sense of how you stack up relative to the external market. And there's a lot of providers that do this. We work with one called Culture Amp, but having that consistent structured survey in place is a good foundation for all of it.
Yeah, like any study, consistency, right? You need to continually in the same questions, basically. Otherwise, you're making up stuff every time, and you can't compare A with oranges.
That's right. There's no trend line, and then what do you do? And I think the other piece that's important, so you have to ask the question and do the survey, but you also have to develop habit with your organization of actually doing something with the results. Because one of the questions that ends up being predictive of engagement is something like, I believe that something's going to be done as a result of this survey, right?
Will I see change?
Yeah. And it's important, especially in a company that is growing and evolving so quickly, to really put down the markers for that change. And so you want to run the survey, and then you want to come back and say, okay, we ran the survey. Here's what the results were. As a leadership team, you need to own those results and then decide what you're going to do about it. And the deciding what you're going to do about it, what actions you're going to take, probably is some collaboration between a leadership team and some broader group of people who want to have a voice in that. And
like a cross-functional group or something like that you pull out.
Yeah, exactly. Because you don't want to dodge the ownership at the senior level. The senior leaders have to really own it, but you want to be inclusive about it and get people engaged. And that's a way to really make change throughout the organization.
In our organization, we do an all team building once a year where we pull in everybody from across, everywhere.
Yeah.
And we identify what are some challenges. And like one of the things that we pulled out we do our global update monthly. It must be 8 years ago now that we established this thing, but it was kudos. And basically we ask for employee-to-employee recognition, not top-down recognition, of people that do things that are outside of their job description.
Yeah.
Let's celebrate that stuff, because that's kind of the glue, is like, oh, so-and-so really, and they get that moment and they get to recognize. So that was something that came up 8 years. We do it every month now. We've done it for years, and it's just, become part of our culture that, everybody gets to recognize everybody, or the people who make a difference.
That's fantastic. I love that sort of grassroots kudos thing. And as a company, if you can have some way to amplify it or encourage it and really make that part of the culture, because it's you want people to notice the good things that others are doing.
So I have to ask, because the book recently came out here. How do you attract, retain, and develop top talent in a competitive and dynamic market? And what are some of the key differentiators of ŌURA's, talent brand, if you will? I mean, right now we're looking at some of the lowest unemployment figures, so people are scarce, right? Or
yeah,
that's what the data would indicate. How do you attract, retain, and develop the top talent?
Yeah, I mean, I think good people are always scarce, and get to really choose how do they want to spend their time, because their time is the most valuable thing. And so I think the things that we can do to attract top talent, we do have a consumer brand that is attractive and that is known among some people. We need to get it broader, but that helps, right? Having a brand that people know and having a product that people have some interest in. So that starts. But I think the main things that companies need to do to attract and retain top talent are simple, but they're not easy. One is that you need to compensate people fairly. And that can mean a lot of different things, but it's got to be fair. And consistent helps there too. But I think the big thing is providing an environment where people can develop their careers and do work that they feel like really matters. It's how you're spending every day. It's the people you're spending it with. It's a big chunk of your life. And that's really the competitive advantage.
Yeah, and if you've got employees that feel like they're making a difference, and it doesn't have to be the same way that every employee is not making the difference in the same way. They all see that differently. I mean, one could be like, hey, we're offering these rings and we're datafying the world, and so everybody's going to understand their health better. For another person, it could just be, I'm making something really cool, or I'm doing something that's going to help. It can have different meanings, but it's all about making an impact, and whatever that impact is to the individual.
Yeah, that's right. I think connecting the work that you're doing every day to a mission that you care about. And that can be exactly the same as the company's mission, or it can be some variant of it that's important for you. But the work needs to have meaning. And I think that's a real differentiator.
Yeah. What about developing them? How do you go about continuing to develop employees as they, you come in and obviously they have some skills, or you probably wouldn't have brought them in. How do you keep that going? I mean, there's a lot of changes going on in the world today. As I like to say, anybody who thinks they're going into a degreed program and think they know what the job is they're going to get when they come out, just like we didn't know where we'd be, when we were talking about it. But even in those 4 years or 6 years or how many ever years it takes you to get out of school, the job landscape in terms of what jobs are available has changed. How do you keep people's skills fresh?
Yeah, it's so true. And I've spent most of my professional career working for companies that didn't exist when I was in college. So I couldn't have possibly predicted all of this. I think in a growth company, it's a balance. And I guess I say this a lot. There are so many opportunities to grow. And your career development path in a company like this is often, if you can keep up with the growth of the company and the growth of its needs, your job is going to grow out from under you, and just keeping up is going to be your career development path. As leaders in a company like this, we need to provide a little bit of structure and a little bit of curation around that to make sure that it makes sense. So, for example, we want to have a way to recognize when somebody's job has whatever doubled in size or doubled in complexity, so that we can make sure that we are recognizing that through compensation, through title, whether it's bringing people onto their team to support the work. And so that we can pay attention to that and make sure that people aren't just doing more with the same footprint, because that doesn't feel like career growth. That feels like burnout.
It's like, thanks for doing a good job. We'll just give you more.
Yeah, exactly. And that, especially for top performers, is often a pattern. And so we've got to stay sharp on that and make sure that that we're continuing to be fair about all those things. I think part of it too is helping to set people's expectations about what career development is going to look like. Sometimes for folks who have recently come out of school or people who have an idea about what a structured training program might look like, they come into an environment like this one and it feels like the Wild West. And they say, well, there's no career development because you don't have me in classes. And recognizing that the way adults learn isn't necessarily about being in classes. It's about having the opportunity to practice the things that you learn and actually put that into action and develop those habits over time. Like there's a lot of learning going on, but we need to call it out or people miss it. Yeah, that's right.
Like, oh, I memorized this formula or concept or algorithm. It's like, yeah, that's great, but can you use it? Have you used it? And now it's ingrained in your DNA.
Yeah. And so I think for the employees and also for their managers, recognizing all of that kind of organic learning that's going on and rewarding it and signposting it so that people really feel that growth and they can feel good about all the progress that they've made.
That's so well said. And we have so much more to get to, Judy, but we have to stop here. Coming up in the second part of my talk with Judy Gilbert, the Chief People Officer of ŌURA, Judy shares some advice on how leaders can build their culture.
Finding ways to invite feedback and show people that their feedback is being used to change, to evolve the company. That's really valuable to be able to give people that agency in shaping their environment.
This has been Fire Your Hiring Habits. If you want to empower your organization to reach new heights, go to johnwmitchell.com to find the techniques and tools you need to attract and retain the best team and boldly reimagine your workplace. Fire Your Hiring Habits with John Mitchell is a production of Forbes Books.